Good evening, and calling the meeting to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools regular Board of Education meeting. It is Tuesday, December the 3rd. Charlotte, may you please call the roll?
Mr. Gagnon,
Present.
Mr. Goldman,
Here.
Dr. Harris,
Here.
Ms. Merriman,
Here.
Mrs. Nazarella,
Present.
Dr. Thomas-Farquharson,
Here.
Mrs. Yagelov,
Present.
Student Representative Sarah Granquist,
Here.
and Student Representative Alexis Newen.
Here. Thank you. And Alexis, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And with that, we do not have a revision to the agenda. And now it is time for public communications. This is where we're able to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak. We ask when you go to the podium to please share your name and your town of residence. Please be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time. And when your time is expired, you will see a red card. We ask for you please to respectfully conclude your sentence and take your seat. With this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. For our awareness for this evening, the agenda includes several policies that will be reviewed: Policy 5690, 5620, 5635, and 5210. Also, staff reports and board discussions relating to mental health and wellness update, as well as the financial report and approval of the minutes. We will begin first by those speaking on agenda items. I do have a list here, so I'm going to start with who is on the list. Only one name so far. So, Brendan Callahan.
This is not an agenda item.
That's all right.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brendan Callahan. I'm a West Hartford resident. My wife and I have 2 daughters at Duffy. We have a lot of gratitude for the Duffy community. We think Christy Laverty is a tremendous principal, and we felt so much love from all the teachers at Duffy. We also know that it's a values-driven leadership from the administrators here in this room, as well as this Board of Education that helps to support such excellence. So thank you all. I'm here tonight to share a concern about the extended school year program. Our younger daughter, Charlotte, is in the intensive academics program at Duffy, and she qualifies for full-day ESY. I want to share a little bit about Charlotte. So she's a wonderful daughter. She has a beautiful smile. She has curly hair that everyone always gushes over. She loves to ride her scooter, and she loves to read books with her sister. Charlotte also has complex needs stemming from multiple diagnoses. Learning is difficult for Charlotte. Speech has come slowly. She has challenges with fine motor and gross motor development. Her vision is impaired. She has one functioning arm, but the other did not develop past her elbow. Charlotte requires a one-to-one paraprofessional. It's a powerless feeling as a parent to know that we don't have the knowledge and the skill to meet all of Charlotte's needs and to ensure her growth as a learner. We depend on the expertise and the care of her team at Duffy. For this reason, summer is a struggle for Charlotte and for us. Our older daughter can access a wide range of enriching programs over the summer, but Charlotte cannot. She flails without her routines. She faces social isolation. She regresses in so many ways. 2 summers ago, West Hartford cut ESY from 6 weeks to 4 weeks. Many years before that, ESY had been as long as 8 weeks. The trend line here is alarming. A 50% a 50% cut that leaves a gap of 6 weeks for the most vulnerable learners in our community. We believe this decision was guided by staff recruitment challenges and not by the needs of students with the most intensive needs. We ask for more creative problem solving in this case to expand ESY supports for students like Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? I'll ask again. We shall pause on public communications. Now moving on to non-staff communications and reports. This is where we're able to hear from our student representatives. Let us first begin hearing from Sarah, sharing about Hall.
Over the past few weeks at Hall, we have had some exciting events. Last weekend was the Hall-Conard football game, which, as always, had an amazing turnout, and we are very excited that Hall won, continuing our 4-year Mayor's Cup victory streak. Last week, teachers participated in a fun Secret Spirit Week. Each day, teachers would all dress up with a secret theme, and students then had until 7th period to guess what that theme was. Out of the students who guessed correctly, one student was selected each day to win a prize. Right now, we are in between the fall and winter sports seasons, and the winter season kicks off on Monday officially, but many teams are starting their practices this week. On Friday, Hall has its Unified Theater show. Students have been working hard all year to prepare for this production and rehearsing every night this week. The show will have an Olympics theme, and we encourage all community members to attend and support Unified Theater. On Saturday, Hall Safe Grad is hosting a Shop the Halls event in the cafeteria from 10 to 3. There will be many local vendors, and the event will raise money to support the Safe Grad event at the end of the school year. The Hall Choraleers, our select choir group, are continuing their annual telegram program. You can pay to have a group of choraleers come to your house or event and sing Christmas carols while dressed in some fun costumes. Coming up next week, Hall alum Zach Roush, who is the lead researcher for the Anxious Generation, will be hosting an event on the 12th from 7 to 9. On the 13th, Zach Roush will be visiting both Hall and Conard to talk with students. We are looking forward to hearing about the important topics such as mental health from a Hall alum.
Thank you, Sarah. Alexis, please share what's going on at Conard.
After much excitement last week with our Secret Teacher Spirit Week and Thanksgiving break, Conard is ready to have even more fun and productivity in December. 2 weeks ago, the Screenagers event hosted by Rebecca Seaton and the Community of Concern at Bristow went extremely well. With around 70 participants, there were many effective conversations about the impacts of phone usage. To hear more, you can attend a discussion with the lead researcher from an informational book titled Anxious Generation, which details the impact of smartphones on students and mental health, here at Town Hall on December 12th. Additionally, we are proud of the students that attended the event hosted by One Community last Monday to represent Conard and its values. Our 10-minute plays production was very successful and garnered many crowds 2 weeks ago. Great job to everyone that participated. The Black Box will be used once again for a show by Parachute, our improv troupe, on Thursday, December 12th at 7 p.m. With free admission, there's no reason not to stop by and watch the talent of these young stars. Also, auditions for our school musical Disaster will be taking place this week. We are eagerly waiting for the show's opening in March and wish everyone auditioning the best of luck. Conard's winter concert, including choir, orchestra, and band, will take place on December 18th, and it will include various long-standing musical traditions that each of the groups have. With the ending of the football season, most of Conard's fall sports have concluded. The only team left is girls cross country, who will be sending 2 runners off to nationals in San Diego in 2 weeks. To do this, they had to place within the top 10 at the Northeastern Regional this past Saturday. Congrats to Liv and Tess Sherry on this accomplishment. Despite the unlucky result of the Conard Hall game 2 Saturdays ago, we'd like to thank our security team and custodial staff for their dedication and effort towards keeping Conard a safe and clean environment, not just that day, but throughout the whole season. We'd also like to thank the senior class board for providing concessions for football games all season. And on behalf of the entire student body, thank you to Chick-fil-A for making an appearance and passing out awards for free nuggets, which was great. As winter sports start this week, we anticipate lots of success for our teams and wish them the best of luck. Starting last month, the junior class board began organizing holiday helpers again. For the past 15 years, the Conard Holiday Helper program has sponsored students in need during the holiday season. This year, the program is sponsoring over 60 students from Conard and Smith, as well as other schools in the community. Conard students, teachers, staff, Conard community classes, teams, and community members have come together to support this worthy cause. Lastly, today there was an instructor that came in to teach teachers how to do martial arts and Tai Chi. We'd like to thank the Chinese department for organizing this event. And the Conard Current, our school newspaper, released their fall edition, which covers many powerful issues and topics. There will be a parent-principal forum at 6 p.m. in the seminar room on December 12th for those interested. And finally, Conard's National Honor Society will also be hosting our annual Pajama Day in support of the Connecticut Children's Medical Center on Friday, December 13th, so donate if you can.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Now we shall go to unfinished business, which we do not have any of. Now on to new business, where we have a motion by Lorna Thomas-Farquharson, Jason Gagnon, and Gayle Harris to accept revised policies as a first reading. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education accept as a first reading the following revised policies, which were reviewed by the Board Policy Subcommittee, including 5690, Suicide Prevention and Intervention, 5620, Immunizations, 5635, Recess and Play-Based Learning, and 5210, Admission Entry Ages. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Gayle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. So teammates, once again, we have several policies before you, and these are ones that will help us remain being compliant with regulations and statutes that we are obligated to uphold. Full transparency, these are policies that are already in practice. This is a way of ensuring that our paperwork reflects what is being practiced. But nonetheless, any questions or comments or suggestions you may have, as this is a first reading? Shannon.
Just a minor question under the immunization policy. It actually names a specific person, and I just haven't seen that in policy because you'd want to, I would think, make it kind of timeless. So I didn't know if the position should be named as opposed to the person.
No, the statute actually requires us to name our nurse practitioner for that, someone for the district who would be contacted for any questions. And that is Carrie Anderson.
Does it require an amendment every time if that person changes, or?
It's an administrative piece. That position doesn't change, however.
Okay.
This is the second one we've had in the 16 years I've been here, so
Okay.
we're good.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Claire.
With the school age before to be turning 5 by September 1st, there's nothing in the policy about waivers. Is that still being offered? Do we know what the state has put forth?
What I believe that the waivers are situationally based. It depends on the assessment results. And so it's not a wide usage, that is. I believe that families that request for their child to be an exception and to be waived, there is certain procedures that the district applies. And if they meet those criteria, then the waiver is applied. But they first have to go through the assessment process.
It was my understanding, though, that was part of the rollout of the program, but that in 2 or 3 years, it would not be a part of the program. But I guess, is it now continuing?
I will have our teammate Jason
So
contribute.
the state has kicked that around, I think, at an initial level, but there's no pending litigation that would kind of fix that transition period. So for now, at least, the waiver period is going to stay as part of the law.
That's what I.
And we'll continue then to follow our process with that we put in place.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Ethan.
The write-up was very helpful again, Andy, so thank you.
That was a whole compliment. All right, nice. Okay, that's all right.
I'd like to see it keep coming.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So again, this is a first reading. It will come before us again for a second reading, at which time we will vote on those policies. Now moving on to staff communications and reports, where we'll have our superintendent's report. So we see a different face here right now. Superintendent Viciennes is not here. We have the wonderful Dr. Murrow, who is here to report out on the district's behalf. Thank you. Passing it to you.
Absolutely, thank you. Just a couple of items to share tonight. In collaboration with the town of West Hartford, the West Hartford Police Department, and the U.S. Department of Justice, the Office of Equity Advancement co-hosted a very successful United Against Hate program on Thursday, November 21st at the Town Hall. U.S. Attorney for the District of Connecticut, Vanessa Roberts Avery, provided the keynote, and a panel of law enforcement professionals at the federal, state, and local level engaged the audience in conversations about thwarting hate crimes and hate incidents. As far as an update on the contract negotiations, as we said with the teachers union, that these have been completed. The teachers have recently ratified the current tentative agreement for 2025-26 through 28, and we'll be providing a public presentation to the board in the upcoming meetings for that, at either the next one in December or January, dependent upon the timing of that. What else do we have? As Sarah mentioned, High School will host the 2024 Unified Theater event on Friday, December 6th at 7 p.m. Olympic Games theme with student groups representing a variety of sporting events. No ticket is required ahead of time. However, donations are welcomed and suggested. And that's what I have.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments regarding our superintendent's update? Claire.
I'm just curious, so at that public meeting is when the new contract and details of it become public, and not before then?
It will be published as part of the board packet, but yes, that's when it's shared and presented. Liz, Julio, and myself will provide information on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions or comments regarding our superintendent's update? All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Murrow. And we're moving right along to staff reports and board discussions, where we now will have the mental health and wellness update. And as teammates come to the table, we'll pass to Dr. Murrow to provide introductions, please.
They need no introductions. No. We have Melissa Caballero, our Executive Director of Pupil Services, and Kelly Browse, the Assistant Director of Pupil Services. And the topic tonight is really giving an update on the important work that we're doing with mental health and some of the metrics that we use to track that work during the school year, both with students and with our staff.
Well, good evening. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. Happy to be at the board table tonight presenting and welcoming my colleague for the first time to the board table, Kelly Browse, who's joined us, former leader at one of our buildings and stepped in to Pupil Services this summer. But it feels like a much longer time that she's been working with us. Her leadership, her commitment, her unwavering support for our students has really been such a great addition to the department. And so we're so happy to have her leadership in this work and have her here presenting with me. So welcome. And as you know, I do like to do this presentation every year to share an update on mental health and wellness, particularly at this time of year. While Mental Health Awareness Month is September, I feel like situating this presentation in December as we're in the middle of the holiday season is just a good reminder for all the services we offer for our students in our schools and the layers of support that we have, but also as a reminder to the adults that mental health and wellness is really important, and it's important that we take care of ourselves and that we also model that for our students. And I really like to draw the connection between our mental health to our physical health, because even the healthiest of individuals get sick sometimes. And that's true of mental health too, life gives us experiences, and sometimes we need a little extra help getting through those different experiences that we might have across our lifetime. And so knowing where those resources are, how to access them, and who might be available in a school or in the community that might be part of that support network becomes very important. So in tonight's presentation, we want to give you some updates and some new information on drivers in the work around mental health, what the district's been doing and how our trends look, how we monitor and what we're seeing for our students, and then how we're partnering with some community providers, what our clinicians are doing, and what this work will look like moving forward. So just some background, we've really seen, this is not a West Hartford thing, but more across the country and really across the globe, that mental health was on the rise with concerns and needs really spiking before the COVID pandemic. So that trend predates the pandemic, and then we know that the pandemic certainly was a factor that created social isolation and some other components that really impacted individuals' mental health and even the access to mental health organizations during that time of closure, where a lot of organizations closed, and then the need presently has continued to become strong. And good news is I am seeing a lot more community engagement around mental health services, a lot of new people going into the work around mental health, a lot of new practices opening in the local area, which is positive. But really, as a school system over the past few years, we've really been responding in live time to what our students' needs have been. When ESSER funds were allocated to the school district, we made a lot of strategic decisions around how we could leverage those funds to really enhance our staffing and support our students through that difficult time of school closure and post return after that. And so we continue to monitor our student trends, which we'll discuss tonight, and monitor how our clinical supports are matching those needs and what we might be able to do in the future to continue to be preventative and responsive to our students. So some of this work really involves suicide prevention and intervention. We review our policies, our practices, and as you heard in the previous report, one of the policies is up for revision. And we also have internal working policies and procedures around how staff handle reports and concerns, our evaluation tools that we use, and preventative measures that we have in place. And we'll talk more about the layers in the curriculum later in the presentation. But really, the CSD came out with some guidance last year, and it was 2023, relative to the fact that they were using their suicide advisory board to really look at preventative measures, tools, and resources, and wanted to put out some guidance. And so last year in the spring, as we were working on our internal manual and our clinical team was looking at different assessments, they came out and said, we will give you some assessments, and then they landed on the Columbia Lighthouse Suicide Severity Rating Scale, which was timely because we were, that was the assessment we were planning to select, so it worked out perfectly. And so we have moved to a new evaluative method, and that's all of our clinicians were trained at the end of last year. We continue to have meetings around coherence and understanding the evaluation and scoring, just so that they're connected in a professional learning community about this evaluation. One of the things about this evaluation that's different than some of the other evaluations, it's endorsed by a lot of different reputable groups of mental health professionals, and it can be used and applied really widely. So the training's completely free. There's a whole website with all of the resources. This is the tool that's recommended in businesses and in the medical world and for schools. So police, fire, community, and so we've undergone all of that training, and we've updated our suicide prevention manual, and as you heard, the policies up for revision as well. So we've been engaging in that work. And similarly, we've been working on our crisis intervention manual, which really has a district lens. And so we have a district crisis team that meets quarterly, looking at our policies and procedures. And really the goal and focus this year is really around making sure there's coherence and equitable practices across all of our schools, so that we have a common language, common expectations, and that the teams are meeting regularly at the school-based level around all of our policies and practices for crises.
And so one of the major pieces of work that we've been focusing on with that group and with our district is revamping our one of our response protocols, our safety assessments. So just like you heard Melissa share about when a student is making an expression of harm towards themselves, our suicide model that we use to assess risk, we do have a new model that we've been working on and we've been rolling out to assess when a student has an expression of harm towards others. We'll refer to that as a threat. So that might be at young ages a picture, a piece of writing, and it might be a verbal expression towards a peer, towards a staff member. We take that very seriously. We know that it's a huge responsibility of ours to ensure safety when we have a report of that nature. We also know that most often underlying some expression like that is a mental health need. And so we've always had a very comprehensive safety assessment that we've used. A proactive risk assessment tool is what we used to use. But over the past year, we've been moving towards something called the CSTAG. It stands for the Comprehensive School Assessment Threat Guidance. And it's by Dr. Dewey Cornell out of Virginia. It's been used for a couple decades now, but this is out of guidance from the CSDE, and it's been a really, I really see it as a great new approach because it's very consistent. We've had, I'll go through the training and then explain why I really believe in this approach to our safety assessments. Back in the spring, we had Kim Myers, who's the state trainer. She trained our core team, and then right on election day, I joined the entire clinical staff. So I think there's 46.8, maybe. We were looking at numbers today, as well as some PD and a member of our Youth Services Bureau. We were all trained by Kim Myers on election day, and then we also had training with our principals because it's a really comprehensive approach. So it's a series of questions that when we're receiving a report that a student has made some kind of expression of harm, a threat, that they're being responded to in a very strategic, comprehensive, calibrated way with multiple people who are well trained, a clinician and the building principal, to make sure that they have a trusted adult there, that we're getting to the root of what's behind that expression. If it has any substantive nature to it that requires a higher level of response, if it's something that is really an expression of frustration or something going on socially that we can then respond to through our other measures. So I think it's been a great new level to our work as far as ensuring the safety of our entire community and really getting to the mental health needs of our students. And so we'll be fully launched. We have one more training planned, and then by January, this will be a practice that we're using across the district. And I just find it to be a very calibrated, comprehensive, student-centered approach.
So one of the ways that the district measures and tracks data is by monitoring the risk assessments that have been completed, and we've tracked this data for a long time over time. So we have a great repertoire of the data, of our student data. And so what you see here is that we've had an increasing trend with some variance during the COVID years where we see a little bit of a dip. And you know, I'm hesitant to say that there's either a decrease or a stabilization because it's so slight from last school year, but we'll continue to monitor that. It looks like the numbers from this year are exactly where they were at this time last year. So we're seeing some consistencies, and we'll take a deeper look in the trends. But, you know, we're really seeing just the slightest little bit of decrease or possible stabilization there. And, you know, really what we're seeing is as we're doing assessments, this is an opportunity for us to really make those connections with families. So anytime a risk assessment is completed, our clinicians are making contact with parents. They're connecting them with resources. They're asking more questions to learn more about their child, what they might be experiencing, connecting them with community resources, if not, or maybe following up with their provider if they already have one, so that there's a continuous loop, and maybe it's services for the interim, or maybe it's situational. So really just tracking that and following students as we collect data. One of the other things we're able to extrapolate from this data is where these referrals come from. And so referrals can be made to a clinical team member from the students themselves, from staff members, from parents and caregivers. Another student might share something from about their peer. We see them come through anonymous alerts. And then there's other, which might be like an outside provider or clinician calling into the school, or a community member who might be a family friend who might have some knowledge that they want to bring to somebody's attention. You know, we still see that staff continue to be our key and kind of the most referrals come from our staff who are, you know, connected with students and understanding when there might be something of concern that comes up. But one of the trends that we've actually seen over the past few years is that students have been self-reporting more. So I think last year's 2 years ago, their percentage was at 18%. And so now we're seeing a little bit more student self-reporting, which I think is a real positive trend. You know, we're really seeing over the years that there's a lot more open discussions about mental health and wellness. There's more accessibility to resources in different formats. You know, I heard it in the student update. We have a presentation coming up for the anxious generation. I heard it at our last Board of Ed meeting where, Teresa and her team were talking about affinity spaces, and some of the community partners were mental health providers that are just part of the work. And I think that the accessibility and destigmatization around mental health has been a real win. We're seeing a trend where other students are encouraging their peers to get support, and I think that is attributed to the conversations around understanding risk factors, warning signs, and how you can be a good friend and support a peer who might be going through a difficult time and connecting them with the right resources. And so those are all really positive trends in the numbers, and we're happy to see that peers are helping peers, and it really demonstrates some feedback to us around some of the curriculum-based measures and tools that are part of the work that we do to really support people connecting with these mental health resources. And then what I did here was I pulled the last 3 comprehensive school years to pull data around the level of risk assessed within the numbers. So taking just a deeper look at what are the risk levels in the total amount of risk assessments completed. And one of the reasons this data becomes important is because while we're seeing a little bit less overall risk assessments, we're actually seeing a different trend within that trend, which is that the risk level of the risk assessments has been a little bit higher. So we're seeing that when we're conducting a risk assessment, while the majority of risk assessments are still in the low risk category, we are seeing more in the medium, high, and emergency risk category. And those require a little bit more follow-up depending on the risk level. It might be connecting with outside agencies, outside services. It might be a follow-up or check-ins with a clinician, direct services, or it might be accessing some community-based or medical services, which might include, we have the urgent care centers now for mental health and wellness, and sometimes there are really serious situations where we're involving, mental health professionals, at the hospitals. So we do track that, and so it's just something for us to monitor as we look at, where are our students, what do they need, how do we program appropriately for them with our mental health professionals, that, we're looking at the total number and then also the risk factors associated within those assessments.
So while we know this information about our students and what need is in front of us, what's really exciting to talk about is what we're able to do for our students. And I think our response, you heard us talk a bit about our reactive strategies, the assessment tools we might use when a need is brought to us, but there's so much we do proactively, and that's really at the heart of what is helping our students achieve at the wonderful levels that we're able to celebrate here at this table during other presentations as well. So, I want to start by just sharing. It's important to know that even at the curriculum level in our general education classrooms, 1 to 2 times a week, starting as early as kindergarten, they're having lessons around concepts that are supporting their mental health, things that help them build coping strategies, self-management skills, interpersonal skills, optimistic thinking. So those are built right into our curriculum with the Second Step program, which is a research-based model. It carries into the secondary programming with our health course curriculum. And then in addition to that, we're also very lucky to have the addition or to have been able to keep our school counselors this year, 3 of our school counselors at the elementary level. So those counselors have been assigned to the schools with higher needs based on the density and the reports that we're able to observe through the data. And they're doing both general education lessons for the whole class as well as pullouts, where they're able to target students who have identified needs from the classroom teacher around a specific skill that's going to help them develop those strategies. We truly believe that there are teachable skills to help students combat mental health challenges that naturally ebb and flow as they grow. I think one thing that I definitely want to highlight about our counselors is that having their presence in the building, both at the elementary and secondary level, and having that contact with the students is so important, because we want children to be able to go to a trusted adult, a familiar adult, when they are having, those moments in their life of mental health needs. So it's hard to go to a stranger and talk about it, but to have these opportunities that are naturally woven into our curriculum and our core experiences for students create even more of a bridge for them to access help when they really need it. In addition, we're doing incredible professional development, and I think it's really wraparound, and it's breathed into everything we do. I mean, including our equity PDs, when we're talking about a sense of belonging, it's that relationship and making sure that there is a trusted adult for every child and that they're building a sense of community and taking care of one another. And that's why we're seeing the increases in students advocating for their peers when they see something or hear something, and feeling destigmatized about talking about this with trusted people and getting the help they need. And that's such a wonderful growth, I think, in just society in general, that our children are comfortable asking for that. And then we're really working on expanding community partnerships. We're happy to have this. We have a wonderful relationship with the Bridge. They come in, they provide additional counseling in addition to our provisions that are done for our students who have counseling and sessions with our psychologists built right into their IEPs and their 504s, things that we have identified as needs. We get to provide additional supports through these partnerships. Social services, Hartford Healthcare with our IOL program for students that might need temporary longer-term care. And we also have the drug, alcohol, and tobacco program through Wheeler. That's been an incredible partner. We've just this year been able to really utilize them to support students with those specific needs. So I think that we're seeing really wraparound supports that are proactively embedded in our curriculum and in our programming, in addition to reactive measures that we take consistently and collaboratively to get our students exactly what they need. And then in addition to what we do for our students, we really want to be partners for our community and for our parents, and making sure that they know that if there is something going on, they can come to us. We have resources available, but we need to know about those needs that they might be seeing in their home, because if we don't know about them, we might be missing a great opportunity to connect them with a resource, or just offer support in some way. And so that's something that we're definitely asking of our families, to come to us and to see us as partners, and to destigmatize, this work further. There's some great resources that have been developing over the past year and a half in the state. Urgent crisis centers, there's 4 in the state now. One is right down the street, right over the line in Hartford. And it's really a wonderful resource for our families. We've discussed here, and I'm sure in years past you've heard us talk about younger children kind of having dysregulated behaviors, not having those coping strategies. And when they're in those moments of what we'll call crisis, families can take their children right to these centers that are really clinical environments, not hospital environments, and receive care immediately. They, as the students are calming and finding comfort in that environment, they can then do assessments and provide them to services within 24 hours. So we've really been working to encourage our families to utilize some great community supports as well. What else did I want to talk about? We're also, I know we talked a little bit about, the offering next week, which I'm so excited about, the anxious generation, and really looking as a community at that social media piece and how that contributes, and how we can proactively support our youngsters growing up, with this as part of what affects their mental health. But I think something that I want to point out that ties into this is a big message in the anxious generation is the importance of the communal approach, and, not doing it in isolation. And so I really encourage our community to continue talking parent to parent, educator to parent, educator to educator, and really encouraging one another to just have those conversations, so it's not as stigmatizing. Because if we can all work on these things together, our kids will be better for it. And we're clearly seeing that as we look at the trends in the data. Anything I didn't touch on here? Okay. And then as we just go forward, I think we're really looking to continue monitoring the needs as we move to the full use of our safety assessments that we discussed, and being able to capture information in that way. I think it will really help us articulate any further trends to guide our reactive work, but also our proactive work and what else might be needed. I think, we're definitely seeing that our clinical staff, we allocate that by not only the hours that are allotted through IEP services. So we calculate all that and we make sure that those hours are in the day, but we recognize that they're really needed to respond as well, and provide all of those things we talked about tonight that might not be able to be captured on paper. So that drives, our future staffing decisions as well. And then we are working really hard to explore future community partnerships. We have been in conversations, which we hope to share this spring, particularly to programming for our students who might not be able to access I mean, our town could not offer more when you look through that rec desk, right? But can all of our students access those programs? And that's something that we're really committed to because we know those relationships and perhaps those non-academic experiences offered in this town it may not be as possible for every child to join, and we need to make sure that we're creating more bridges for that. So that's something we've been working on as well. Anything else? No. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing we just want to share is that we had the great opportunity before the board meeting to go over to the Noah Webster Library where they did a grand reveal of their mental health mural, which was so well attended. It was a beautiful celebration. We weren't able to stay for all of it, but what a beautiful mural and, you know, a representation of the student work in the mental health world. Do you want to say any more about that?
I think it's just a reflection that our students are invested in what it means to have good mental health and to talk about it and to support one another. When you look at the messages that they chose to, you know, adorn the walls of our library with, it really speaks to this generation and how invested they are in taking care of one another. So it was such a beautiful, there was music, there were speeches, it was incredible.
Really nice.
So
Really
I
nice
encourage you to go
celebration.
over to the teen room if you get a chance over at the library next door. So I think we're ready for any questions. If you
Yes.
have any for us.
All right, boy, thank you so very much. Teammates, questions, comments regarding the report we received? Latoya.
Thank you. I just have a couple ones. Hopefully they're just quick. So my first one is the risk assessment. Does it also include like self-harm in other ways? So like cutting and things like that? Okay, cool. And then I had a question around support. I had two more questions. One is around support for school staff. I know we're centering this around our students, but just thinking about I know in my own professional experiences with doing some of my trainings with counselors and stuff, like they are also going through a lot too, and then they're working with students that are going through a lot. So just wondering about what supports might be in place for our school staff around mental health.
Such a great question. Thank you for asking that because I thought about that we didn't include that in our presentation. It's a little bit in our report, but annually we provide mental health training for all of our staff. So that's an annual training PD requirement, but also for our clinicians. I think your point is salient because as mental health professionals, they're interfacing with students who are at times in crisis, and that can be very hard as an individual. And so we've been really trying to connect as a professional group of clinicians and have the professional development time be together, both around the assessment, interpretation of data, how they're responding, what tools and interventions are we using. And then I'll just dovetail and say that, as part of our annual messaging to staff, Julio's always messaging that we do have an employee assistance program for our staff. Because again, while we're talking about students' mental health, we just want to also just acknowledge that as adults, it's also an important message to send when we acknowledge and take care of ourselves. And so we do have that available for our employees, and we do make sure we message that so that they also know what resources are available for staff.
Awesome, thank you. And then just one final question around the social emotional learning piece. And I know there's some things being talked about in high school. One of the things I thought was so great at the elementary schools was all the social emotional learning stuff. You see it on the walls, you see it on the floors, you see it everywhere, in a big part of the culture. And I do notice as the kids get older, you see less of that on the walls and stuff, and kind of less. So I think what I'm wondering is how, like, what is it looking like to build that social emotional learning on top of each other as the students advance, so that it's still as important for them to think about those concepts when they're a junior in high school, just as it was important for them when they were in third grade. Does that make sense?
It does. You see less of that on the walls and more of it in the curriculum. And so as students get older, we have second step, for our younger students, and then it transitions to our health and wellness curriculum, which is very robust. And so then it's in the classroom more so than it might be. Although I have seen at different times, like I know in September for mental health awareness, the high schools and the middle schools did do a pretty big event, and there was a lot of messaging around it. So there will be times where you see it. There's also a really great student prevention work group that goes through the town, and some clubs and groups around mental health awareness. So we see it in those pockets as well, but it lives more in the curriculum when we get into the secondary schools, but still definitely a focus.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you're all doing and just supporting and normalizing, mental health support. I think what it's doing for our kids, especially because we do have such a high achieving district, is that, dude, like therapy is maintenance. And when they go to college, like it'll be a regular thing for them. Like I can have a therapist while I'm in college the whole time to support my journey. So I think y'all are doing a great job with setting that foundation of normalizing it now so it can just be a regular part of life. So thank you.
Yes, Jason.
So thank you again for all you do, and I'm always impressed with the just sheer amount of resources that our students and our families have. I've got two questions. The first one kind of dovetails off of LaToya's questions about SEL. So you talked about second steps and how that moves up through the ages. How do we measure the success of this? So you talked about seeing some of, I think at one point mentioned success and seeing some trends in the data. How are we measuring the success of this?
I'll take part of it, but feel free to jump in too. So the metrics that we're using right now are around our risk assessments, and then also obviously there are classes and teachers are kind of taking the temperature. We have some screeners that we use as well. So we like to think about mental health. We have services available for all students. So all students are receiving curriculum in Tier 1 instruction. And then we have students who have more specialized clinical needs where they might be receiving counseling as part of their Section 504 plan or part of their individualized education plan. But we do have mental health services available for all students. So one of the other ways that we can measure that is by looking at the density of clinical services being offered through plans, and also the amount of students who might be accessing clinical services without a plan. So we have that density data to understand, what are the trends telling us relative to identification of a clinical need under a disability category, and also who might be accessing clinical services. I'll use the counselors, for example, through a tiered intervention that might be short-term in nature or might be situational specific, that they still have a need, but it might not be a long-term standing need, or it might be required for a long period of time. And so we're able to actually disaggregate the data both ways and look at it that way as one of the metrics for giving us some feedback around that.
I just think from the building level also, there's other metrics that our principals might be looking at to really assess over time how their students are doing. Things like attendance, right, is a big one. Certainly when we're seeing a chronic attendance go down, that's telling us that students are feeling more equipped to come to school and be ready to learn. And also discipline or office referrals, we take a close look at that. We look at it both in terms of, you can look at it through subgroups, through all different lenses to really understand your population at a building and think about, what's working and where are students really showing a need based on the level of response we're having, so that you can, really think proactively as a school team about what else might be done. So I think there's some other, metrics that might not be something that gets presented kind of at the 30,000-foot level that's really driving some great work at the buildings as well.
Right. I think that's important because, our gut tells us, there's a real need here, right? We all see that. And at the same time, it's also telling us that these programs are fantastic. But I think it's important to also have that data that says, yeah, this confirms what we've all been thinking. So things like, I think, looking at, instances of dysregulation in the classroom, things like that, I think those would be important. My other question is that I've had the great opportunity to spend a lot of time in a great number of the schools recently on some tours, and have gotten to interact with teachers and administration and students. And I know for a lot of the schools that parents and kids, especially first generation Americans, face a lot of language barriers. Others will face also a lot of financial barriers to accessing the schools in general, right? To be able to communicate is really important. If you don't speak English, it can be really difficult, but there are a lot of great programs in place that we have, so we're reaching those families. What about for these mental health resources? Are there, ways to get around language and financial barriers?
Yeah, so we have some wonderful community partners. To name one, I think about Vivian at the Board of Health, who's, constantly partnering with us to identify families that she can support, with translating to access like local resources like that. And then we have our internal teams as well who support our buildings. And we obviously have translators and we translate materials to send home. And teachers have just, blown me away with the level of ease that they do that with now just to communicate home. But I think that we've also invested, our district funds as well in making sure that we have specific people to serve in that liaison role for our families. So they might visit the school with the family, they might serve, and ask questions, and then communicate for the schools to those families to make sure that they know what's available to them and why. Because I think it's not just about that translation of communication, but also cultural differences and expectations that one might have from what their experience was, and how communities might offer resources in different ways, and they might mean different things to different people, right? And so being offered a resource could mean something totally different than the way it's intended by our school team, as help or assistance, a step forward, and it just might be taken a different way. So I think our liaisons do a great job of trying to create context as well, and that's an important factor in reaching those families. And ultimately, it comes back again to everything, Teresa Rangel talks about with sense of belonging and just all of the opportunities that our schools create to, even if you can't understand everything you're saying, when you can invite a family in and have pizza at bingo at school with them, those sense of belonging and those connections make it easier to help families access what they need because of the relationships.
And I'll just piggyback off of that and just say, going back to our partnerships, we are so fortunate that we've had this longstanding partnership with the Bridge, where we do fund West Hartford funds free private mental health services in the schools for students through the Bridge. And so we've had that relationship with them for a very, very long time. They're a huge partner and support for us. And we've also, over the years, because of language and cultural reasons, have really researched and found different individuals who have practices and might be Portuguese speaking, for example. So we can connect families with somebody who is a provider in the mental health world that does speak their native language, because as Kelly said, that becomes really important. So we really are trying to remove any barriers that families might face in accessing mental health services. And so we do have a list that we maintain, and we even have providers who are so great that they're willing to do those meetings virtually if families are open, if transportation or commuting would be a factor. And so we've really worked to really find community members who might be able to fulfill that need so that we don't have any access issues for our students and our families. So that's been really helpful. And then I know Kelly talked about it a little bit. We have the Institute of Living at both high schools, and that's a private clinic. And last year we started a pilot with the Bridge with a private clinic at the middle schools. And that provider is completely booked across all 3 middle schools with the Bridge. And so we've continued that in a real partnership this year. And so I think that's also helped to remove the barrier of afternoon appointment slots for students who are looking to access mental health services, where their providers were booked between after school hours into the evening, and then families had a struggle connecting with and getting a mental health provider. So that's been a really great partnership with the Bridge and the Institute of Living. And so, we'll continue to monitor that, but, we'd love to expand in the future if the right providers are part of the team. So that's just another great way for us to support our families.
Other questions or comments? Ethan.
This is more for future. Just looking at the statistics, would it be possible to look at it per capita or percentage of students? Because the question I had is, as the numbers go up, is it how does it relate to the population of the student body? And then also, I'd be interested in looking at it, high school versus middle school versus elementary. You know, is there something happen in one of those groups? So,
Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely make a note of that and do that for next
okay.
time.
Since you do this annually, I figure you can wait till next year.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gayle.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. My question is more related to something that you touched on and our student representatives touched on a little bit as well, regarding the trends of the mental health crisis that seem to coalesce with the advent of smartphones and internet and social media. And I think there's a growing body of evidence that's starting to link the mental health crisis with smartphones and with social media. So my question is, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit, if there is anything that we're doing in the schools to try to educate students and to try to help them with essentially the addiction to social media and cell phones, which I think is driving this mental health crisis in a big way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Research is really starting to show as we get more research, right? You know, technology in some ways is still so new, and as we get research and research studies, it's really starting to link some of those components together. And so we have been actively spreading health and wellness campaigns around technology use. And just this year, all of the schools really implemented a stricter cell phone policy, which you might be living right now. And I found it interesting, actually, in the beginning of the year, it was even a point of reflection as a mother myself, when we were talking about, you know, the statistics around who students were texting most during the day, and it was their parents. And I was guilty. But it's just another good point of reflection to kind of stop and pause and think about how technology has impacted our students, how we're using it as a society. And so the schools have a bunch of different workshops that have been happening, and we've actually been partnering with the community quite a bit on that. So we have a number of groups, the Community of Concern, we have a student advocacy group, and then also West Hartford Social Services and the Youth Bureau have all been partnering around workshops and opportunities after school and in the evenings. And then they hosted, I'm going to forget the name of the event that happened earlier this school year, but they are trying to put out bigger campaigns and partner with us around messaging around positive use of technology, having healthy boundaries and setting limits. And so we're really trying to do that in the schools and model that with our cell phone policy as well, so that we're using it for educational purposes and teaching kids how to navigate all the things they have access to.
Okay, thank you. So what is the stricter cell phone policy?
You know, I'm not as, Andy, you maybe our student representatives can tell us more. I'm not as probably well-versed as you guys are.
I think basically what it is after like your lesson ends in like a class, oftentimes like in the past few years, like most students would just kind of take out their phone and kind of just sit and kind of catch up with what they missed within the 45 minutes of class. But now we're not able to do that because a lot of teachers are using like phone pockets and like are very like they're all told to report I think report anytime a phone is out and like so that it's like an immediate like write up and everything, so it kind of scares students and forces us to have like actual social interactions at the end of class and everything. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, it's kind of what Alexis said. It's just you can't have your phone out unless the teacher said like it's allowed to be out for whatever for educational purposes for whatever reason. And I also agree. I think it's something where like last year, like I would have gone on my phone at the end of class, but now it's like, no, I go talk to someone. And I actually think it's a really positive thing.
And I'll just add to roll it out. I got to witness our interim principal at Hall deliver one of our town meetings. So she met with each grade level as an entire group right in that first week of school and really talked about what the expectations were. They had some nice visuals. And then she said, hey, I'm telling the teachers they have to report it. So you heard it from me. And so I think in both high schools, they did a really nice job of rolling that out and making sure students heard the same message. And it was clear to the teachers. And I think We've heard, certainly higher reports of engagement from teachers, but I think even from the students, I've been able to hear how they realize they can focus a little more. Your mind just isn't always wandering because, nobody's using it during those times. So it's amazing to just see that link. And I think you're spot on with the research as well. I think we're going to see a lot more of it, in the coming years. And hopefully we'll all learn from it, right?
Other questions? Claire?
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. I was very happy to see the increase in self-reporting and that the stigma's down, and also the success of the counseling being used within the high school and the middle school. The cell phone policy, how different is it from elementary to middle? Does anyone know?
So at the elementary level, they're not allowed to have cell phones at all. There should be no phone use. And so typically, historically, I can speak that it used to come to the office if it was at use and the parents would have to pick it up. I think at the middle school, it mirrors the high school where it just needs to be away and out of sight.
Okay, a few more. So I was very impressed with the Conard Brothers organization, but I feel in general like teen rooms and youth groups within churches and these places where kids can be themselves and be together. And I wondered about gender sexuality alliances, the GSA clubs. I feel very strongly that that club could be for a child who might have two mothers, a child whose uncle has transitioned. It could be for allies, for people who just don't like the teasing that they hear and want to show support. And there are, right now, I think in 2015, 11% of our youth identified as LGBTQ. That number is now 25%. And the suicide rate is 4 times the level. It's also the second leading cause of death, suicide, in 10 to 14-year-olds. So there's a real concern I have, especially with some of the political things that are happening. States that have transgender laws, there is a high increase of trauma cases. So do you know much about what the district's doing in order to offer this safe space for allies and people who identify as LGBTQ?
I can say that we definitely have safe spaces. I know Teresa would be able to identify a little more clearly what those look like than I might be able to. But what I can share with you is that we have layers of clinical support, and there are definitely groups that are more vulnerable, as you're pointing out. And so that is our hope as we design our clinical supports. We have clinical supports for students who have plans, but then we have clinical supports that are available and accessible to any and all students for that exact reason. A student who is exploring identity might need clinical supports, and it's available to them, and it doesn't have to fall under any type of plan. It's just available in the milieu. And I know that there are, and I don't know if you're aware of any of those groups that are running, but I know that we do establish affinity spaces and ways for students to connect and to build relationships with that sense of belonging really at the forefront.
One more question. I know your purview is special education. So this is mental health is a broader picture and a larger. From a practical standpoint, is the mental health services and that all part of the special education budget, even though they're not mandated services?
Correct, yes. So pupil services itself oversees the clinical teams because we manage, monitor, and supervise our clinical staff. But when we are programming, we program for the whole district for all of our students. So you'll see that in my budget line item when we propose the pupil services budget, but those supports and services are geared to all students. And so, we really talked a lot. We have different departments in the Board of Education, but we're still one team. And so we provide services just like the curriculum office provides curriculum to all students. All students are general education students first. Pupil services is looking at all students also. And we're really working together in concert to kind of say, what are all of our students' needs? And so we might supervise clinical, but we're recognizing that the trend isn't just for identified needs students who have necessarily disabilities, but students who might have short-term or interim mental health needs that might not have a disability, but might need access points. And so really, as we look at data and we're assessing student needs, we're really being considerate of all students in the district so that when we're making proposals for the board to consider, whether it's, around staffing or programming, that we're being thoughtful of not just students who fall under special education, but all students who participate in the board's program.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yes, LaToya.
Just a couple things I wanted to say. One was about just thinking about what Claire was saying about the affinity space. One thing I do want to highlight is in my household, the GSA club at Hall is like raved about as a favored club for students that identify and allies. And so I just want to say kudos to that because it is a club that I know that LGBTQ plus students attend and also students who are allies. And there's a lot of flexibility around participation. So like if you can't come every time, but if you just want to come to one meeting a month or whatever the case is, there's an open door policy for students who want to come and be a part of it. And I didn't know that before, but I'm getting that information obviously from my child. And so it's really cool. So I wanted to just shout that out. And then the other thing I wanted to say about the cell phones, and I'm saying this because I know our meetings are recorded and other people can see it, and I think that parents have to hear, when it comes down to the cell phones, we also have to check our own behavior. It's hard to set boundaries around cell phones and technology with your students, and then when they come home to you, you're like this the whole time. And so I think for us, in order to support the schools in this effort of we need to be healthy, we need to have healthy boundaries with this. Our part in supporting y'all is we have to do it too. We are also addicted to the phones too. And so we can't just say it's the kids. So I think we need to really check ourselves and join our students in those healthy boundaries. Hey, everyone in the house is off of phones at X time. I am not going to be texting you during the school day because I also was guilty of that. I was like, why did I think my kid isn't busy with school? What? And then mad when she doesn't respond. And she's like, Mom, I have school. So, I had to check myself too. And so I just wanted to say that that's the way that I think we as families need to show up in support with the district around healthy boundaries. We got to do it too. So thanks for that.
Other questions or comments? I also thank you very much for the report, and I echo all of the questions and comments that teammates have made. What's top of mind right now is we got to do it too with what was just shared, and very much appreciate the emphasis on being proactive and self-care and recognizing that mental health applies to us all. And that is something that I strongly believe in. And thank you so much as well for promoting destigmatizing it also. I appreciate also the questions regarding the metrics that are giving evidence to the work that's being done, how it's working. And I'm thinking of that as it's December, and we know we have January, February, and then March, budget season. And there was some talk in terms of budget line items and how that accounts for the work that's being done. And this presentation certainly gives credence as to when it's working, let's have it to continue to work. And just want that to be top of mind in our conversations as we talk about our budget. And we certainly want to do that, supporting our young people all the more. So thank you so very much for all that you're doing. And that is beautiful, the picture from the mural. Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And as transitions take place, we shall proceed with the agenda. Now moving on to routine matters, where we shall receive our financial report. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending October 31st, 2024. Is there a motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. So hello, Liz. Wonderful to see you here. And I believe this evening the inaugural report will be given by Jason. Passing it over to you, Jason.
Yeah, all of a sudden I feel like there's a math test about to happen and having flashbacks. So I think I'll start by saying, and what's important to me is there are no surprises, bad, or no surprises good. So everything is pretty much as was budgeted. So I think credit to Liz and her team. For the general fund, total expenditures to date of $49,187,911. Expected expenditures for the year on track for $200,738,856. We currently have a $65,000 surplus in the general fund, most of which is being driven by a $50,000 current surplus and transportation costs. That is something that we should be watching throughout the rest of the year. It's expected that with the special education transportation costs that surplus could whittle away pretty quickly. The grants funds, there's a carryover authorization total of $4,911,137 as of October 31st, with anticipated additional awards pending. Special program fund is expected to achieve a surplus for the 24-25 fiscal year, with an expected $96,000 in interest income. Nutrition services earned an operating profit of $81,830 in October of 24, seeing an uptick in daily student lunch count, which on a personal note, I was fascinated by, because this tracks what actually happens in my own household, which is you start the year off with great expectations of packing that lunch every day, and then by October, they are certainly buying. Interest income through October for the nutrition services for month end is October $66,161. So we appear to be on track as of the end of October.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments regarding the financial report shared with us? All right, seeing none, all of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Liz. And thank you, Ethan. You're part of that team as well. Thank you. Now moving on to approval of the minutes, seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of November the 19th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, LaToya. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. Any suggested edits or comments? Seeing none, all of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, do we have any communications and reports from other organizations or boards? Seeing none,
Yeah.
passing the mic.
Not a liaison opportunity, but just a notification from the Parent Leadership Training Institute, PLTI, which is an amazing program that's offered district by district, and West Hartford is really fortunate to be able to offer it for the 13th year. They got budget approval, and it's launching January 4th, and so applications, I believe, are live. I'm just looking at the flyer. And we'll start in January, and it's a free 20-week session for parents. It's hosted at Charter Oak International Academy, and it provides for childcare as well as meals. I think we have 3 alumna of the program here, Claire, Lorna, and myself, and cannot speak highly enough about how much opportunity it brings in terms of becoming kind of a catalyst for your community and an advocate in so many different ways. And the time just flies by. So definitely take advantage of it. If you're interested, there is an application online, and Catherine Dean is the point of contact, and her email is westhartfordplti@gmail.com for any information, and we can be sure to share that as well if anybody needs some follow-up. But happy to talk about it with anybody who is interested, because it is fantastic.
Thank you, Shannon. And Claire and I were smiling and nodding right along with you. Wonderful program. Any other reports or discussions? All right. Now moving on to information reports. We did that already. Now we're on to future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will take place on Tuesday, December the 17th, 2024, a regular Board of Education meeting here in room 314 at 7 p.m., followed by Tuesday, January 21st, 2024, regular Board of Education. Oh, that's right, 2025. Thank you, Jason. Yes. I'll repeat, Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025, at 7 o'clock here in room 314. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Seeing none, do we have any visitors who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session, therefore seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Meeting adjourned.